Gentlemen, you are the top 1% of all naval aviators. The elite.
So what do I think about Top Gun Maverick? Obviously extremely biased because I helped write the original screenplay from June of 2017 till January of 18. I worked, basically one-on-one with the director and writer to go literally line by line through that screenplay to make it ready for Navy review. And as a Tomcat guy, I was brought in because I was available and also having some Tomcat experience. The director asked me, hey, I need you to make sure that when a Tomcat pilot or RIO sees this movie, they talk to somebody. So make sure we get it right. I said, roger that.
I was privileged enough to be one of the Navy advisors early on in the movie, and I remember getting the first script, and I got towards the end, and lo and behold, they're resurrecting the Tomcat.
I appreciate the fact that they listened to me, us, Chaser and I, as we, he gave them the reality of, here's some things you have to do that's going to give credibility to the movie. And I do appreciate that they listened, which says a lot about the director and the writer.
Fast forward, later in the script, there's this acquiring of an enemy Tomcat, and that posed some challenges. Good news for those of us that have been around, especially in the F-14 community, we got a lot of connections, and particularly here in San Diego. So when the script called for an F-14, there were some options. There was one up in Riverside. I think there was one on Hornet up in Alameda. There's certainly one on Midway in San Diego, but those are on the carriers. You would have had to crane them off, but a good friend of mine, he runs the Air and Space Museum here in San Diego. That was a quick call. Slug, you got a Tomcat sitting out at Gillespie Field doing nothing. We want to use it for the movie. Immediate answer was yes. Worked that through the Navy channels. And that's how we got the jet. Of course, the scenes weren't shot here in San Diego. That required getting the jet, taking it mostly apart, putting it on some big trucks, going up to Lake Tahoe and shooting all those scenes in the movie, then putting it back together, bringing it back to San Diego, then craning it on board an actual aircraft carrier for all the scenes that you see out on the carrier. So that when we got the go for the jet, I just kindly asked the movie people I was working with, please don't break it. My reputation's kind of on the line, and they did the best they could. They got the jet back. It looks fine now, but the technical challenges of taking an F-14, ripping it apart, transporting it to other locations, including putting it on an actual aircraft carrier, putting it all back in one piece, and then giving it back to the Air and Space Museum here in San Diego was pretty unique and challenging. But I'm glad we did it. It was a great effort.
So when I was revealed what the plot was about stealing a Tomcat, which I thought was fantastic, and then I said, okay, we're gonna steal a Tomcat, we got to get the startup procedure right. Because if we don't, we're gonna get laughed at by every Tomcat pilot and RIO in the world.
Well, the whole idea of resurrecting the Tomcat is the baseline of the first movie, which was a iconic hit in the 80s, is bring some of that back. And so we spent a lot of time on this, was if you're gonna take a Tomcat from somebody else, you gotta do it right. And so that scene is not made up. I think it would have detracted from the movie if they'd have just pushed a magic start button. But the way they acquire the jet, that's exactly how you do it. It's been done before, and that's why we wrote it that way. You need air power, you need electrical, and you need a RIO that knows how to start it, button it all up, climb on the horizontal stab, walk over the back of the airplane, jump in, and go. And the way that came out in the movie was picture perfect. I got a lot of compliments after the movie, folks calling me up saying, hey Chaser, you guys got that scene right. And we also did a lot of emphasis on the circuit breakers in the back. And even though the jet's is old, by today's standards in the movie, put the right person in that jet and you can still kick some ass.
I appreciate the fact that they got the startup procedure right. They captured the antiquity of the rear cockpit, which we've all dealt with, but they also captured the speed of the aircrafts and just the overall badassness of the F-14 Tomcat in combat. So as a F-14 pilot, I was absolutely thrilled how they depicted that movie, and they couldn't have done a better job.
We didn't care about the storyline, nor what was it our position to really have any say. The story is the story. What the Navy reps, our job was to, whenever you show us doing business, let's get it right. And we worked really, really hard, and you see it. You see it in the movie. And that's, thanks to the Navy's commitment, but more importantly to, Paramount and Joe and Tom. I mean, everybody that made up that team for Top Gun Maverick. Those two correlated very well, and we were all in the same. We were all aligned with, we're going to do the flying right.
Early on, they wanted to do all F-35s. And I'm like, that's not going to happen on many levels. A, you can't get a camera near that aircraft. You can't get in it. There's no two-seat version. And by the way, there's only 10 available to use. And if you want to do that, it's going to be a CGI movie, which I know the director didn't want. So we strong on the producer, and he said he really wanted the nice, bright, shiny toy. I said, well, the bright, shiny toy is not a good call. So go with the 600 Super Hornets you have available to your use. And they jumped on that.
The very first script that I remember seeing was essentially an F-35 movie, which in and of itself, well written, would have been great. But the problem is, and I was the Commodore up in Lemoore when we brought in F-35 to the Navy, starting at Eglin and then eventually over to Lemoore. And to do that, you get fully read in on all the capability of this aircraft, and it's extremely classified, and it's hard to get close to it. So I'm thinking about, how would you shoot a movie about F-35? The cameras would have never got near it, let alone in it. And credit Tom Cruise. It was, hey, if we're going to do this movie, we're all flying in it, which I think brings the realism. So the problem with an F-35 focus for Top Gun Maverick is 90% of that movie would have been CGI, and thankfully they put their foot down and said, no, we're gonna participate in all the scenes via real flying. And so in order to do that, you couldn't use the F-35. So Yank and I looked at each other and said, well, we can do this. We can make it a Rhino movie and keep it real, and that mission, that's how we came up with that mission, is that's real. The difference is we had trained to a mission like that, but it was going to be at night. And I remember doing the flying. You take off and you go through the mountains pretty low on night vision goggles, and you find a target and you hit it with multiple GBU-24s and a threat on the way back. That was pretty harrowing, especially at night, and it's one of those missions that we trained for, put it on the shelf, and thank God we didn't have to pull that one off the shelf. But that just made it easy to give to the directors and the writers, say, hey, look, if you're going to do a movie on the Super Hornet, on the Rhino, this is a legitimate mission. I'm not going to do it at night, obviously, because it would make for a poor movie, but that low-level ingress against a significant threat to a precision-guided strike, and then a significant threat on the way out, that's real, and we've trained to it. And so I was happy that's how that played out, because again, if you're going to show us and what we do, let's do it as real as possible. And so we didn't give them anything that was made up. We didn't give them anything that was outside the lanes of what we do. And if you look at 90% of those flying scenes, those are junior officers from Top Gun, from Lemoore, from Oceana. That's your day-to-day strike fighter pilot or Wizzo who took those crews out there and showed them what they could do.
And also, they wanted to go all single seat. They want to keep the character count down. And of course, being a two-seat guy, I'm like, negative. You need to get the Fs in there, because this mission, if flown in real world, would likely be a two-seat mission for all 4 aircraft. So that low to the ground, the pilot can focus on terrain avoidance, and the Wizzo in the back can do all the management of timing, weapon systems, and all that.
Yeah, so when we first got the script, this is Yank Cummings and myself. We were the early pioneers, representing the Navy on this. I had just finished my career, but I'd raised a daughter and had female aircrew, pilots and Wizzos in my squadron, and I was proud of that. And so what we were looking for is, are there any messages here? And there really wasn't. This wasn't it wasn't driven by social issues. It's just a good story, and we want to make sure that it represented today's today's naval aviation, tactical naval aviation, strike fighter aviation. So when we looked at that mix, we were really happy with it. But we did get to a part where Phoenix was going to have a mishap and lose the aircraft, and the way they had written it was she was going to lose the jet due to G-lock. G-induced loss of consciousness, as you see in the movie. But it was supposed to be her, and I had real trouble with that. And the reason I had trouble with it is when we first started integrating female aviators into tactical aircraft, there were a lot of naysayers, and we struggled with that, and it made the integration a little more difficult, and that always stuck with me. And as I commanded female aviators in my squadron, I never wanted that to be a sticking point. It's either you're good enough to do this job and fly this jet, I don't care who you are and what you look like, you just got to meet the bar, and our bar is pretty damn high. So for her to lose a jet under G-lock, and then the very next scene she's flying again, to me that's just not how we do business. And more importantly, for all those that said the girls can't do it, that was a step back, a couple decades, and we didn't want that. And so thankfully Paramount listened to us, and we made our argument. Hey, got it, it's a dangerous business, you can lose a jet on any given day, and that does happen, but it's not going to be under these conditions, and they changed it. And of course, what you see in the movie is her mishap is due to a bird strike, and again, we offered that up. We're not going to blame it on the jet. The Super Hornet's an awesome jet, and the motors are awesome. If you're going to have a mishap, if you're down low flying at 100 feet and lower on any given day, pretty good chance you're going to hit some birds, and that's how they wrote the script. So that's realistic, and I'm glad they got her part correct. G-lock is real, but again, we just didn't want it under those circumstances for all the naysayers who pushed back over the years. I don't think you see it today, because again, we set the bar, and the bar doesn't move for anybody. And so for me, I think that's a small victory in the messaging of who we are in carrier aviation and strike fighter aviation today.
Please like and share if you find the video content interesting. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and comment below so as not to miss new upcoming videos. And see the entire film, now streaming on YouTube TV, along with the other Tomcat Tales documentaries.